مقطوعة ولا ممنوعة وفرش مرفوعة إنا أنشأناهن إنشاء فجعلناهن أبكارا عربا أترابا لأصحاب اليمين ثلة من الأولين وثلة من الآخرين وأصحاب الشمال ما أصحاب الشمال في سموم وحميم وظل من يحموم لا بارد ولا كريم إنهم كانوا قبل ذلك مترفين وكانوا يصرون على الحنث العظيم وكانوا يقولون أئذا متنا وكنا ترابا وعظاما أئنا لمبعوثون أو آباؤنا الأولون قل إن الأولين والآخرين لمجموعون إلى ميقات يوم معلوم ثم إنكم أيها الضالون المكذبون لآكلون من شجر من زكوم فمالئون منها البطون فشاربون عليه من الحميم فشاربون شرب الهيم هذا نزلهم يوم الدين نحن خلقناكم فلولا تصدقون أفرأيتم ما تمنون أأنتم تخلقونه أم نحن الخالقون نحن قدرنا بينكم الموت وما نحن بمسبوقين على أن نبدل أمثالكم وننشئكم فيما لا تعلمون ولقد علمتم النشأة الأولى فلولا تذكرون أفرأيتم ما تحرثون أأنتم تزرعونه أم نحن الزارعون لو نشاء لجعلناه حطاما فظلتم تفكهون إنا لمغرمون بل نحن محرومون أفرأيتم الماء الذي تشربون أأنتم أنزلتموه من المزن أم نحن المنزلون لو نشاء جعلناه أجاجا فلولا تشكرون أفرأيتم النار التي تورون أأنتم أنشأتم شجرتها أم نحن المنشئون نحن جعلناها تذكرة ومتاعا للمقوين فسبح باسم ربك العظيم فلا أقسم بمواقع النجوم وإنه لقسم لو تعلمون عظيم إنه لقرآن كريم في كتاب مكنون لا يمسه إلا المطهرون تنزيل من رب العالمين أفبهذا الحديث أنتم مدهنون وتجعلون رزقكم أنكم تكذبون فلولا إذا بلغت الحلقوم وأنتم حينئذ تنظرون ونحن أقرب إليه منكم ولكن لا تبصرون فلولا إن كنتم غير مدينين ترجعونها إن كنتم صادقين فأما إن كان من المقربين فروح وريحان وجنة نعيم وأما إن كان من أصحاب اليمين فسلام لك من أصحاب اليمين وأما إن كان من المكذبين الضالين فنزل من حميم وتصلية جحيم إن هذا لهو حق اليقين فسبح باسم ربك العظيم سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده اللهم صنه وجوهنا باليسار ولا تهنا بالإقتار فنسترزق طالبي رزقك ونستعطف شرار خلقك ونشتغل بحمد من أعطانا ونبتلى بذم من منعنا وأنت من وراء ذلك كله أهل العطاء والمنع اللهم كما سنت وجوهنا عن السجود إلا لك فسنا عن الحاجة إلا إليك بجودك وكرمك وفضلك يا أرحم الراحمين يا أرحم الراحمين يا أرحم الراحمين اغننا بفضلك عمن سواك وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وهب لنا به صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم من رزقك الحلال الطيب المبارك ما تصون به وجوهنا عن التعرض إلى أحد من خلقك واجعل اللهم لنا إليه طريقا سهلا من غير فتنة ولا محنة ولا منة ولا تبعة لأحد وجنبنا اللهم الحرام حيث كان وأين كان وعند من كان وحل بيننا وبين أهله وقبض عنا أيديهم واصرف عنا وجوههم وقلوبهم حتى لا نتقلب إلا فيما يرضيك ولا نستعين بنعمتك إلا فيما تحبه وترضاه برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم إن كان رزقنا في السماء فأنزله وإن كان في الأرض فأخرجه وإن كان معسرا فيسره وإن كان بعيدا فقربه وإن كان حراما فطهره وإن كان قليلا فكثره وإن كان معدوما فأوجده وإن كان موقوفا فأجره وإن كان ذنبا فاغفره وإن كان سيئة فامحها، وإن كان خطيئة فتجاوز عنها، وإن كان عثرة فأقلها، وبارك لنا في جميع ذلك إنك مليك مقتدر، وما تشاؤه من أمر يكون، يا من إذا أراد شيئا إنما يقول له كن فيكون. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون، وسلام على المرسلين، والحمد لله رب العالمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم يا الله يا علي يا عظيم يا حليم يا عليم، أنت ربي وعلمك حسبي، فنعم الرب ربي ونعم الحسب حسبي، تنصر من تشاء وأنت العزيز الرحيم. نسألك العصمة في الحركات والسكنات والكلمات والإرادات والخطرات من الشكوك والظنون والأوهام الساترة للقلوب عن مطالعة الغيوب، فقد ابتلي المؤمنون وزلزلوا زلزالا شديدا، وإذ يقول المنافقون والذين في قلوبهم مرض ما وعدنا الله ورسوله إلا غرورا، فثبتنا وانصرنا، وسخر لنا هذا البحر كما سخرت البحر لموسى، وسخرت النار لإبراهيم، وسخرت الجبال والحديد لداود، وسخرت الريح والشياطين والجن لسليمان، وسخر لنا كل بحر هو لك في الأرض والسماء والملك والملكوت، وبحر الدنيا وبحر الآخرة، وسخر لنا كل شيء يا من بيده ملكوت كل شيء. كافها يا عين صاد، كافها يا عين صاد، كافها يا عين صاد. انصرنا فإنك خير الناصرين، وافتح لنا فإنك خير الفاتحين، واغفر لنا فإنك خير الغافرين، وارحمنا فإنك خير الراحمين، وارزقنا فإنك خير الرازقين، واهدنا ونجنا من القوم الظالمين، وهب لنا ريحا طيبة كما هي في علمك، وانشرها علينا من خزائن رحمتك، واحملنا بها حمل الكرامة مع السلامة والعافية في الدين والدنيا والآخرة، إنك على كل شيء قدير. اللهم يسر لنا أمورنا مع الراحة لقلوبنا وأبداننا، والسلامة والعافية في ديننا ودنيانا، وكلنا صاحبا في سفرنا وخليفة في أهلنا، وطمس على وجوه أعدائنا، وامسخهم على مكانتهم فلا يستطيعون المضي ولا المجيء إلينا، ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون، ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم، تنزيل العزيز الرحيم، لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون، لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون. إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون، وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون. شاهت الوجوه شاهت الوجوه شاهت الوجوه، وعنت الوجوه للحي القيوم، وقد خاب من حمل ظلما. طاسين حاميم عين سين قاف، مرج البحرين يلتقيان بينهما برزخ لا يبغيان. حاميم 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 حاميم، حم الأمر وجاه النصر فعلينا لا ينصرون. حاميم تنزيل الكتاب من الله العزيز العليم، غافر الذنب وقابل التوب شديد العقاب ذي الطول، لا إله إلا هو إليه المصير. بسم الله بنا تبارك حيطاننا، ياسين سقفنا، كافها يا عين صاد كفايتنا، حاميم عين سين قاف حمايتنا، فسيكفيكهم الله وهو السميع العليم. ستر العرش مسبول علينا، وعين الله ناظرة إلينا، بحول الله لا يقدر علينا، والله من ورائهم محيط، بل هو قرآن مجيد في لوح محفوظ. فالله خير حافظا وهو أرحم الراحمين، فالله خير حافظا وهو أرحم الراحمين، فالله خير حافظا وهو أرحم الراحمين. إن وليي الله الذي نزل الكتاب وهو يتولى الصالحين. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد. الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض من ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء وسع كرسيه السماوات والأرض ولا يؤوده حفظهما وهو علي العظيم. يا الله يا نور يا حق يا مبين اكسني من نورك وعلمني من علمك وأفهمني عنك وأسمعني منك وبصرني بك وأقمني بشهودك وعرفني الطريق إليك وهونها علي بفضلك وألبسني لباس التقوى منك إنك على كل شيء قدير. يا سميع يا عليم يا حليم يا علي يا عظيم يا الله اسمع دعائي بخصائص لطفك آمين. أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات كلها من شر ما خلق. أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات كلها من شر ما خلق. أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات كلها من شر ما خلق. يا عظيم السلطان يا قديم الإحسان يا دائم النعمة يا باسط الرزق يا كثير الخيرات يا واسع العطاء يا دافع البلاء ويا سامع الدعاء يا حاضرا ليس بغائب يا موجودا عند الشدائد يا خفي اللطف يا لطيف الصنع يا حليما لا يعجل اقض حاجتي برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم إنك تعلم ما نحن فيه وما نطلبه ونرتجيه من رحمتك في أمرنا كله ويسر لنا ما نحن فيه من سفرنا وما نطلبه من حوائجنا وقرب علينا المسافات وسلمنا من العلل والآفات ولا تجعل الدنيا أكبر همنا ولا مبلغ علمنا ولا تسلط علينا من لا يرحمنا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار. نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار. نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار. نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا يا كريم. نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار. نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار. نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا يا كريم. نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا يا كريم نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا يا كريم. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We continue reading from Imam al-Ghazali's adaptive summary of the Ihya al-Ulumuddin, the 40 principles of the religion. We're continuing on page 230 under the subtitle Rectifying Blameworthy Characteristics Through Struggle. The way to rectify all of these blameworthy character traits is struggle and practice. The meaning of struggle is that you force contrariness on the dictates of the dominating extreme quality, thus doing the opposite of what it entails. Thus, if stinginess dominates, do not cease to force yourself to spend and persist in doing so time and time again, until spending becomes easy to you in its appropriate place. If wastefulness dominates, do not cease to force yourself to withhold, until it becomes normal and easy for you to withhold in its appropriate place. The same goes for the characteristic of arrogance and all other characteristics. We have already mentioned this in detail in the book of Training the Ego from Revival of the Religious Sciences. You should know that he who spends by force is not generous, and he who is humble by force and that is hard on his ego is bereft of the characteristic of humility. Rather, character is an expression of a posture of the self from which action comes forth easily without deliberation or force. Force is the way of attaining character whereby a person does not cease to force himself initially until he becomes like that naturally and normally. It is understood from this that the stingy person could spend and the generous person could withhold. Therefore, do not look at the action, but rather at the deeply rooted posture from which action arises easily without any affectation. Know that the differences between people in regards to inner beauty are like the differences between them in regards to outer beauty. Absolute goodness is rarely given. It was indeed given to Allah's Messenger ﷺ to the extent that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praised him by saying, "You are most certainly upon sublime character." Salvation is not dependent on complete achievement, but rather on the inclination to goodness being greater. Indeed, absolute wretchedness is obviously loathsome. Absolute goodness is beloved, and between the two are degrees. So the person close to absolute goodness is happier in this world than the person close to absolute wretchedness. Likewise, happiness in the afterlife differs according to differences of inner beauty. Warning against delusion in attaining good character. Know that you might think of yourself as having good character, yet you are bereft of it. So beware of being deluded. You should make someone else be the judge of your character by asking an insightful friend who does not flatter you. In general, if another person ascribes bad character to you, then it is probable that you are like that, because most character traits are in relation to others, so it is fitting that they appear to them. Among the areas of delusion in regards to character are that, for example, you get angry and you believe that you are angry for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another example is that you show off during worship and think you are doing so in order to set an example, or that you refrain from eating and seeking material things or control your anger, yet it pleases you to be known for these things. This is ostentation, which is the motivation for all these forms of delusion. For this reason, the areas of delusion with regard to good character that I have mentioned in the book of delusion from the revival are many. This short work certainly cannot contain a full description of it. The heart being devoid of blameworthy characteristics, especially love of the world. Your heart should be devoid of these character traits, and you should start in order of importance. Start with the most dominant of these qualities and break them step by step. I believe that the predominant quality within you is love of the world, and all of the other acts of disobedience and blameworthy character traits follow it. Deliverance from love of the world is not possible for you unless you seek pure seclusion and reflect on the reason for your turning to the world and your turning away from the afterlife. You will not find a reason for it other than ignorance and heedlessness. Indeed, the most you will live in the world is 100 years. So suppose that within 100 years you were given a kingdom that spanned the earth from east to west. Would you be pleased while pursuing this to miss out on a kingdom whose duration has no end, which is the kingdom of the afterlife? If you are unable to imagine eternity, then imagine that the entire world is filled with grains. Then imagine a bird taking a single grain once every million years. The grain would come to an end, yet nothing of eternity would be lost, for the remainder also has no end, just as it was before. You see yourself being content with the hardship of travel, whether for trade or seeking leadership, and this consummate hardship is for the sake of something purely supposed. Perhaps you will meet death before it, or perhaps you will not acquire it in full, even if you achieve some success regarding it. However, you are content with that because you consider, for example, a year of hardship to be something small in relation to the rest of your life. Your entire life in relation to eternity is less than a year in relation to your lifespan. Actually, there is no comparison between the two. Therefore, reflect on this, so that your ignorance is unveiled from up close. Perhaps you say, I only do this because I expect to be forgiven, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is certainly generous and merciful. To this I say, why do you not abandon grazing crops, commerce, or seeking wealth with the expectation of finding a treasure in some ruins? For indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is generous, and nothing of His dominion would diminish if He were to let you know in a dream that there was a treasure somewhere that you might take it. If you say, that would be rare, even if it is within Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's power, then know that expecting to be forgiven despite ruinous actions and character is like expecting to find a treasure in ruins. In fact, it is even more far-fetched and rare. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has alerted you to this with His words, man has nothing except what he strives for. He subhanahu wa ta'ala also said, shall we make those who believe and do righteous deeds like those who sow corruption on the earth? You should be averse to seeking wealth, since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, there is not a moving creature on the earth except that its provision is upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How then can you think of denying His generosity in this world and not relying upon Him? And furthermore, deceiving yourself about His generosity in the afterlife, when you know that the Lord of the world and the Lord of the afterlife are one. Perhaps you say, the end results of worldly affairs have been unveiled to me directly and my heart is at rest with them. As for the matter of the afterlife, I have never witnessed it and I do not find within my heart any real affirmation of it. For this reason, my desire for abandoning the world has languished.
No, say it. It was a new chapter you started. Where did you start in the English?
231.
Rectifying blameworthy characteristics through struggle. And where do you read till now?
234. The end of 234.
He doesn't have a chapter heading in the English, but he has one in the Arabic. How far does it go? So you read 1, 2, 3, about 4 pages. Al-Imam al-Ghazali rahimahullah tabaraka wa ta'ala. MashaAllah, some very important lessons that he mentioned here today. May Allah make us from those that take heed. A lot of what was mentioned today doesn't really require much explanation. It's very self-explanatory. but we'll go through it nonetheless, inshallah ta'ala. Of course, yesterday, Imam Ghazali, rahimahullah ta'ala, after he spoke about the makeup of the human being that consists of the outer body, the physical body, and then he spoke about the makeup of the inner, which is the soul. Alright. The way the scholars usually deal with the inner aspect of the human being's body, they say the human being is made up of his heart, and within his heart is his ruh, and within his ruh there is a sir. So they speak about the heart, the ruh, and the sir. But Imam Ghazali is just referring to the inner as one, without drawing any distinction between the ruh and the nafs. He's just saying you have the inner and you have the outer. The outer is the physical body, and the inner here is called referring to as the ruh. And he said that the believer should strive to adorn his inner as how he strives to adorn his outer. And we made reference to the prophetic dua. When looking into a mirror, the Prophet ﷺ taught us to recite, Allahumma kama hassanta khalqi, as how you have adorned my outer appearance, fahassin khuluqi, adorn me from within. So he said that like your face is adorned with your eyes and your nose and your mouth, the features of your face, and without these features you don't look attractive, you don't look beautiful, you don't look appealing. Like that, the inner, which is really the area of the gaze of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks at, what makes up the beauty of the inner are four forces, and he called them the force of knowledge, which is also the intellect, and he spoke of the force of anger, the force of desires, and then he spoke about the force of balance. The fourth force is the force that brings about balance in the remaining, the previous mentioned three forces: knowledge, anger, and desires. And that's a person adorns himself by creating balance. Balance in his desires, balance in his anger. If there is no balance and his anger is extreme, then if there's balance in his anger, then his anger produces praiseworthy qualities such as bravery on the battlefield. It produces the quality of ghayra, the protective jealousy that a man should have over his husband. It produces within him over his wife, the protective jealousy that a man should have over his wife. Right? Also his ability to protect his family, to go and take care of them and do what's necessary to take care of them, etc. And the flip side is that if he lacks the balance of anger, he becomes a tyrant. He becomes an oppressor, right? And with that comes so many other evil and other blameworthy characteristics. So the idea is balance. The more you bring balance within the force of knowledge and anger and desire, the more you become beautiful from within, and the more you develop good qualities and good characteristics, ultimately the more you resemble our Master Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The other point he made yesterday also was the fact that there's no way for me to completely remove bad character from growing within me unless I instill within me good character, which was an important point. Today he's speaking about what did he call it? Islah al-akhlaq al-dhamima bil-mujahada, the heart being rectifying blameworthy characteristics through struggle. Rectifying blameworthy characteristics through struggle. The idea here is for you to understand, and I to understand, that the removal of these blameworthy characteristics, effort must be made. Right? It's not something where I can sit on my musalla and make dua all day. Allah, remove sickness from my heart. Allah, no, the dua is important, turning to Allah is important, but we must also take a means. Yesterday in the Ilzam Bab Rabbak poem that we read, we spoke about what tadbir aydan, leaving planning behind your back, but Habib Umar explained what is meant thereby is that you need to plan, but you plan and with an understanding and placing one's reliance in Allah. Ultimately, things will happen the way Allah wants it. So you submit to Allah's decree and to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's plan, while believing ultimately that my plan cannot compare to the plan of Allah. Right? So yeah, also dua is part of the means that I must take to rectify and purify myself. However, the dua is not something I rely upon alone without struggle. So Imam Ghazali is saying, rectifying your, removing blameworthy characteristics from you requires struggle, mujahada. And he says the way you do that is, I remember Munatta rahimahullah ta'ala always used to make the example of a page. You know, they say that if the page, I don't actually fold the page of this book, but if a page is as a kink and it's folded this way, right, and I want to make it straight, if I bring the page straight, the page was folded like this. There's a line, if you can picture that. If I just fold the fold straight, it's always going to incline to that side. The more I make it straight, the more it will incline. If I actually want it to be straight, I have to turn it all the way to the side, and then it will be straight. So that's basically what he's saying. You need to exert, if you have one bad quality, then exert yourself in doing the opposite of that bad quality in order for you to reach a balance. So he said, by way of example, if a person is trialed with stinginess, bukhul, so he needs to force himself to start spending with struggle. It's difficult, but he gives. There's an opportunity, the masjid bag comes around, he doesn't want to spend his money, he forces himself to give. Right? Somebody comes to his window at a robot, and he has no evidence that this person is going to use his money in a haram way. He forces himself to give. Right? You see somebody's status about a madrasa looking for funds, you force yourself to give. Why? Because I need to remedy my stinginess by giving. Even if it's a giving with struggle, I need to fold the page the other side based on the example that Manata rahimahullah ta'ala made. Fold it that way. تداوم عليه مرة بعد أخرى. You do it over and over and over, forcing yourself until eventually spending becomes easy for you. Until eventually parting with your wealth becomes easy and even beloved to you. Right? Similarly, a person who spends too much is a spendthrift. He can't keep money, he just spends. He says such a person must force himself to hold back and not to spend, until preserving and holding back his money becomes either a custom of his. So he thus learns it's easy for him to not spend his money when it's not desired for him to spend his money, and he's able to spend his money when it is desired for him to spend his money. So he creates the balance. Right? Stinginess is a very problematic feature. So brothers go out with friends. There's some people, they never come forward to spend anything. People are stingy when it comes to their own families. It's difficult to spend on his wife, to spend on his children. The most virtuous charity you can give is charity that you give to your family. A dirham that you spend on your own family is the most virtuous dirham that you have spent. No. So that's the way in which you make mujahada. Whatever your quality is, you do the opposite. Imam Ghazali then wanted you to also know that a person who now is forcing himself to spend, whenever the masjid bag comes around, he gives money. Whenever there's opportunity to give charity, he gives charity. That person is not necessarily considered a generous person. He hasn't developed the quality of generosity, which is praiseworthy. He still holds within him a blameworthy characteristic, which is stinginess, but by giving against his will, he is starting to break down that stinginess. But he is not called a generous person. No. Similarly, a person who keeps himself humble, which is beautiful. We must force ourselves to be humble, even though we're not. But the person who's forcing himself to be humble is not truly someone that has humility. Right? Something is only written as your character if it becomes something that is naturally part of you, something that comes naturally from you, must become a sijiyya. It needs to emanate from you bisuhula, especially at times of difficulty. So a man may be humble, he may be humble, but when he's really tested, then his true qualities show. Right? Therefore, Imam Shafi'i said, you only really come to know somebody if you do business with that person, and if you travel with that person, and if you live with the person. That's when you come to know somebody. Otherwise, it's easy to fool people. Right? But when you do business with somebody, you come to know them. When you travel with somebody, you come to know them. Right? Ask Junaid when he traveled with Daniel and Tosif, and they came to know each other. No, I don't think Junaid was there. No? Daniel and Adi and Tosif. You come to know people once you start living with them, once you start doing business with them, once you start traveling with them. Because it's difficult to pretend in those spaces. Your true quality starts showing. So you only have a quality once it comes naturally from you. On a separate topic, the Sunnah should become like that within us, right? I'm just shifting away from al-Ghazali's discussion. But the Sunnah should become something that's naturally part of us. You need to be consistent in implementing the Sunnah of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or that which the scholars consider to be recommended or desired, such that it happens automatically. Automatically when I leave home, I started reading the dua, Allahumma inni as'aluka bihaqqi sayyidina, for the masjid, Allahumma inni as'aluka bihaqqi sayyidina alayk, bihaqqi raghibin alayk, wa inni lam akhruj ataran, wala ashran, wala bataran, wala riya'an, bal kharajtu ittiqa'a sakhatika. Qasim, you don't know the dua. Every day you come to the masjid, you don't know the dua. Yusuf. Bal kharajtu ittiqa'a. I don't know what they're teaching at the Hafidz school there at DTI. Maybe I must blame Shaykh Muhammad, Isaacs. The students at the Hafidz school don't know the dua when leaving to the masjid. بل خرجت اتقاء سخطك وابتغاء مرضاتك أسألك أن تنقذني من النار وأن تدخلني الجنة برحمتك. It must happen naturally. It shouldn't be something that I need to consciously remind myself with difficulty. Many of our mashayikh, some of the most rarest sunnahs some sunnahs that, if it's entering the lavatory, leaving the lavatory, leaving home, Bismillah tawakkaltu ala Allah, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, things that you do a lot, you can see how the sunnah becomes part of you. But our mashayikh, sometimes sunnahs that you only apply once in a blue moon, that's also part of them. Everything of the sunnah comes from them naturally. And you may have heard that we were once traveling with Habib Umar from Portland's Masjid. We had a program there in the evening, and we had a meal by Shaykh Ibrahim Gabriel's home. And then we were coming back to the accommodation here in the southern suburbs, so we were driving home from Portland. And the squatter camp on the left, as you're leaving Mitchell's Plain, one of those shacks were on fire. And when we saw the fire, immediately Sayyid Habib Umar started shouting out the adhan, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. At that point in time, most of us never even knew that the jurors recommended to call out the adhan when you see a house on fire. It's a recommended practice that is so rare that the mashayikh that was in the van with Habib Umar never knew it's sunnah to call the adhan out. And we came to read afterwards in the books. Like, the adhan is generally, there's a number of times when the adhan is recommended, of course for salah. That's the asl. But it's also recommended to call the adhan when somebody travels. Therefore, in our community, when somebody leaves for Hajj, we normally call the adhan. But that adhan is not for Hajj, it's for any travel. When somebody leaves on a journey, to call the adhan out. And the actual way the jurists say it should be done is, as the person travels, he's leaving, he gets into the car and he starts driving to the airport, then you call the adhan out. Allah Akbar, as he's driving away. Right? Or maybe while he's walking to the car. In the early days, they didn't jump in a car and drive away. So they would have heard the adhan as they commenced their journey. And they said the adhan called out at that time, it's been tried and tested that it brings about ease in that person's journey. It removes the hurdles. That's why we call the adhan when somebody goes on Hajj. Then another time when it's recommended to call the adhan is when somebody is troubled with jinn. Call the adhan over him. Because Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said that when the adhan is called, shaitan flees and runs away, releasing flatulence. And another time they say when it's recommended to make the adhan when you see a house burning down. So just immediate, the sunnah is so engraved within them that it just comes naturally. So but that's what Imam Ghazali is saying here. Good character is good character when it's engraved within you, when it's part of you. Right? You don't have to think to do it, it's just what you do. You naturally lower yourself. You naturally pardon. You naturally suppress your anger. You naturally give. You naturally assist. That's when you have good character. While you're struggling to get this good character, you're not really described with the character yet. That's what Imam Ghazali wants to highlight over here. But the more you struggle and strive, eventually you will develop the good character and it will become part of you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created every human being with the capacity to be good or bad. You may say, I was born with bad qualities. And I mean, that's debatable where you were actually born. No child can be born with bad qualities. Children are born pure. Children are pure. When you emanate, not when you wait, when you are in the womb of your mother, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you, your soul is pure and your heart is pure. It's so pure that you actually heard angels having conversations in the womb of your mother. The Prophet ﷺ told us that in the hadith, angels come and they determine what your rizq will be and when you will die. If we maintain that purity, we will remember the conversation that angels had when we were there. And we will know what rizq is written out for us and we will know when we're going to die. But we came into a world and we polluted our souls and polluted our hearts. And therefore it's so important to protect children because they are pure. So you're not born with bad qualities. Bad qualities are something that you develop. And like you develop those blameworthy bad characteristics, in the first place you are able to get rid of it. And like you earned bad qualities, you can, like you adopted and bad qualities became part of you, you can adopt good qualities and characteristics and it can become part of you. Hakada, that's how Allah created you and I. Now, he then said that people, however, in terms of their beauty and their perfection of the inner, is similar to people, the levels of people in terms of their beauty and perfection inwardly is the same as the outer beauty. Like people differ on various levels in terms of the outer beauty, thus they are in terms of the inner beauty. Right? Like Ismail's a handsome guy, mashallah. But someone else here may not be so handsome. I don't know to make another example. And similarly, they will have deficiencies in the inner appearance, inner qualities. Except one person who was perfected outwardly and he was perfected inwardly. There was no deficiency in his outer appearance and there was no deficiency in his inner appearance. Sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. He was perfection upon perfection. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Nothing of his outer appearance could be done better. Nothing of his inner appearance could be done better. Therefore, Sayyidina Hassan bin Thabit said of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that أحسن منك لم تر قط عيني, my eyes have never seen anyone more perfect than you. وأجمل منك لم تلد النساء, more handsome than you, no lady has ever given birth to. خُلِقْتَ مُبَرَّأً مِنْ كُلِّ عَيْبٍ. You are created free from every defect. You are created free from every deficiency. كَأَنَّكَ قَدْ خُلِقْتَ كَمَا تَشَاءُ. It was as if you created how you want. You were created how you wished to be created. Ajib. Subhanallah. Thereafter, Imam Ghazali says that our success is not dependent on actually reaching that perfection. In case you feel that if I'm going to die and I have stinginess in me, I'm going to die, I'm going to have anger in me, I'm going to die, I have desires within me. No, it says that what success is not dependent upon that. Success is dependent on how you act. So even though I have stinginess in me, I'm fighting stinginess and I'm trying to be generous. Even though I have anger in me, I'm fighting my anger and I'm directing my anger to be in line with the Sharia, to be used in a way that is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's what's required. Do you want to read this? He says, why does nobody change my marker in my book? You say that salvation is not dependent on complete achievement, but rather the inclination to goodness being greater. Indeed, absolute wretchedness is obviously loathsome. Absolute goodness is beloved, and between the two are degrees. So the person close to absolute goodness is happier in the world than the person close to absolute wretchedness. Likewise, happiness in the afterlife differs according to differences of the inner beauty. Imam Ghazali then starts another important topic now. He says he wants to warn you of delusion. Why does he want to warn you of delusion? Because many people walk around deluded, thinking that they have good character, thinking that they are generous, thinking that they are kind, thinking that they are humble, but they are the furthest thing from generosity and kindness and being humble. It's very easy to develop an incorrect perception of yourself. Right? Sometimes you think you are sincere, but you're not sincere. And that's Shaitan's job. Shaitan's job is to deceive you in thinking that you are doing good, but you're not. No. So he said many times you think you have good character, but you don't. So he says, beware and do not be deceived. If you want to know whether you have good character or not, ينبغي أن تحكم فيه غيرك. Appoint someone else to pass judgment whether you have those good qualities or not. فتسأل أنه صديقا بصيرا لا يداينك. Ask a friend that has insight and that's going to be truthful and not answer you with answers that you want to hear. You come to your friend, do you see me as a truthful person? And you know that you are a liar, and your friend says you are the most truthful person I know. That's not going to help. If you want to know you have good character, I give you a simple recipe. You can accept it or reject it. If you want to know you have good character, go ask Ibrahim. He'll tell you like it is. He also said that if somebody else tells you that you have a bad character, then he said, in most instances, that person is right. If somebody tells you you have a bad character, in most instances, that person is right. What he's telling you over here is that when somebody tells you, criticizes you for a quality, then your first approach should not be to reject what that person says. When somebody tells you you have a bad quality, your first approach should be to internalize and search within yourself to see that bad quality. And then strive to rid yourself from that bad quality. No. He says also from the areas where people are often deceived is that they become angry thinking that they're angry for the sake of Allah. But that's not the case. or they make their actions of worship known, but the intention, with an intention in their mind that they're trying to set a good precedent so people can take example from them, but they're actually doing it because they want to be seen and known. Or you suppress your anger, or you fast, or you turn away from dunya, and then you make up excuses in your mind for every action that you're doing, but ultimately you just want to be seen. So you're deceived. That's one of the big areas where people are deceived. Imam Ghazali rahimahullah ta'ala in his Ihya Ulumuddin has an entire chapter that speaks about deception, how people are deceived regarding themselves. We discussed that at length. He said, this book of mine here is an abridgment, and I can't get into the details over here, but in his Ihya Ulumuddin he discusses it at length. We constantly over and over deceive ourselves. I come to you, right? I speak ill of another person. Then what do? I deceive myself. I say, so and so, he goes to nightclubs. And most of the time when you're speaking ill of somebody, what you're actually doing, and Ghazali in his works, he says, what you're actually doing is, you're trying to say how you're better than that person. Right? Qasim was my friend. Now, Qasim has another friend, Isa. But I want Qasim to be my friend more than what is Isa's friend. So I tell Qasim, you know what? Isa wasn't fasting yesterday. He was eating. And he broke his fast. But I'm not really worried about whether Isa broke his fast or not. I just want Qasim to see me as a better friend. Right? So what do is, I disguise me speaking about Isa behind his back under what? No, this is Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said that Man ra'a minkum munkaran falyughayyiru biyadihi. He should change it with his hand. فَإِن لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِلِسَانِهِ. If he cannot change it with his hand, he should change it with his. Whoever of you sees a wrong, Rasul sallallahu said, he should change it with his hand. If he cannot change it with his hand, he should change it with his tongue. Speak out against it. If he cannot speak out against it, then he should change it with his heart. And the Prophet said, changing it with your heart is the weakest form of faith. The scholar said, from the meanings of changing something with your heart is, when I know of somebody doing wrong, I sit down with a group of friends and I make them aware of the wrong that that person is doing, so that we can collectively find a solution to get that person away from the wrong. Right? So now I speak to Qasim almost like I have concern. Isa, he is eating in Ramadan, he doesn't fast. And, how can we support him, and how can we aid him, and how can we call him back to the straight path, and. All under the guise that I'm worried about, how can I guide Isa back? But at the back of my mind, I just want to be seen in Qasim's eyes that I'm better than Isa. Now that's a simple example that I'm making. But in the world, it happens a lot. It happens over and over. In workplaces. I say something, by the way, nonchalant, very subtly, to my boss about somebody else. And the objective is just to make myself look great. I can't also speak directly to my boss. He's a bad person, because then I look like an idiot just trying to make my co-workers sound bad. So I present it in such a sly way that I don't want to say it directly. I say it indirectly because I want my boss to actually figure out what I'm indicating to without me really saying something bad about him, but I'm sending that message to my... The world is filled with that. It's filled with it. And we're just delusional, thinking that we are good and thinking. So Imam Ghazali speak about it a lot. Ajib. Khatib gives a beautiful lecture. He speaks out against wrongs. He sounds so passionate about that being wrong. But it's not about the wrong. It's just about coming across emotional or sounding like someone that's very concerned about his deen. But in reality, that's not the case. I always make the example of the whole Eid debate, whether I should celebrate Eid with Makkah or the moon. Alright? And now that debate, it used to just be between Makkah and the moon. Now it's a whole lot of other funny positions that have come into society. May Allah unite our hearts. The point I'm coming to is that, for me, if somebody celebrates Eid with Makkah or with, it really doesn't matter to me, but more importantly, respect one another, live together, be brothers, and also practice caution when it comes to certain matters of deen. Like on the occasion of Eid al-Adha, I always say to people that if you celebrate Eid with Makkah, then Bismillah, celebrate Eid with Makkah. Enjoy yourself. Right? But when it comes to your slaughtering, delay your slaughtering till the next day. Because the time period for slaughtering is the day of Eid and the 3 days of Tashriq. You have a 4-day opportunity to slaughter. When I celebrate Eid with the moon a day later, then my slaughter is valid according to those who celebrated Eid with Makkah the previous day, and according to those who celebrate Eid with the moon. But when the person who celebrates Eid with Makkah, by way of example, slaughters on the day of his Eid, then according to the majority of scholars who said Eid only starts the next day, his slaughter is not valid. He slaughtered before the time. So while we respect views, sometimes we must also have that notion within us. How can I ensure that my ibadah is valid according to the majority of scholars rather than a small minority of scholars? But either way, the point I'm coming to is that it's fine. Celebrate Eid al-Makkah, no problem. You're my brother, I love you, I respect you. No issue at all. My problem is sometimes the type of debate that people engage in. And it shows you that sometimes people portray themselves as if they're getting angry for deen. That's what Imam Ghazali is saying exactly. Taghdab. He becomes angry and then he gives you the impression that he's angry for Allah, but he's not really angry for Allah. And the example I make here is somebody relayed this to me a long time ago. That one uncle who celebrated Eid with Makkah, there was talk about scholars meeting and reaching one opinion and just setting, either celebrate with Makkah or celebrate with the moon, and they were all going to reach this agreement. There was talk like this many years ago. So one uncle came home and he said to his family that not over my dead body will we ever celebrate Eid with the moon. Now, the outward kalam is that my deen is important. And I believe this to be the truth. And I will not forsake what I believe to be the truth for something I believe to be false. Right, so the impression is I'm angry for the sake of Allah and upholding the correct position within our deen. Outwardly, that's the impression that one gives. Right? But then the same uncle who narrated the story to me told me that same Buddha that made all that noise, his daughter has a boyfriend that comes sits on the couch every night. And her aura's uncovered. And she goes on dates with the boyfriend. And they hold hands and they kiss. And he mentioned a list of things that happens in this Buddha's home. So how can you portray that you are so passionate about your deen when it comes to the day that Eid should be celebrated? But on other matters that is agreed upon haram, no anger. You are pleased to have your daughters hold hands and kiss a stranger, to go out with a stranger, to break Allah's law where there's consensus. But on a matter on whether I should celebrate Eid al-Makkah, I'm willing to sacrifice my life. That's not anger for Allah. That's not anger for Allah. You may think it's anger for Allah, but you are deceived. That's not anger. That is so you can be seen as someone that is serious about your deen. But how serious are you really about deen? If your daughter's aura is uncovered, and can't be. So don't be deceived. This is the lesson from Imam Ghazali. Don't you be deceived and don't let shaitan deceive you. Sometimes you imagine you're doing good, but at the back of it, it's really your desire to be seen, ostentation that creeps in. And then he said again, I've spoken more about this in detail in my book, in the chapter of deception in the Ihya Ulum-ud-Din. Now, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala purify our hearts. Ghazali gives us the same lessons over and over. Allah make us from those who keep our actions hidden. I spoke about Bishr al-Hafi before. Who remembers Bishr al-Hafi? Huh? Who is Bishr al-Hafi? The word Hafi should tell you, remind you who he was. Huh? Hafi means barefoot. Where did he receive it? He received his opening and sainthood from who? Sayyidina Ja'far as-Sadiq. No. He was in his home and he was having a party and someone came knocking on his door and he asked the girl, the owner of this house, is he free or is he a slave? That's true. So Bishr al-Hafi, he was someone that kept his state hidden from people. Somebody came to him once and said to him that, yeah, Bishr, can I spend some time alone with you so that I can observe you and see how you spend your time? Right? So Bishr told him, Khair, inshallah, set the day and then we can see, we can speak about it. Maybe you can accompany for a day. So the person never got back to him. And without him knowing, he entered the house of Bishr al-Hafi. And when he entered, he found Bishr was making salah. And he admired, he said, this person said, I've never saw anyone perfecting their salah the way Bishr al-Hafi perfected his salah. And in his sajda, he heard Bishr making dua, Allahumma innaka ta'alam, oh Allah, you know, fawqa arshik, from above your throne, that being unknown in this world is more beloved to me than being known. Right? And he said, oh Allah, Allahumma innaka ta'alam, oh Allah, you know, fawqa arshik, from above your throne, that poverty is more beloved to me than richness. And then he said, oh Allah, you know, innaka ta'alam, from above your throne, that I prefer nothing in existence over you. And I love nothing more in existence than my love for you. So this person who was observing Bishr, he was so taken by these beautiful supplications of Bishr al-Hafi that he broke out crying. So Bishr heard him. So he continued to say, Allahumma innaka ta'alam, oh Allah, you know, أني لو أعلم أن هذا هنا لم أتكلم. Oh Allah, you know, it is such that, oh Allah, you know, that if I knew this person was standing here, I wouldn't have made this application such that he could hear me. Whenever we get to hide our amal, subhanAllah. Al-Imam al-Mawardi, he authored many beneficial books. And a lot of his books he actually did not publish. He didn't make it public. He never shared it with anyone. And then he told someone that was close to him, like a khadim, he told him that, I want you to observe me on my deathbed. What books do you know of Mawardi? No, that's Munawi. Al-Mawardi has the Al-Ahkam al-Sultaniyah and the Hawi. Al-Hawi al-Mawardi. So he told his khadim that, on my deathbed, if I die and I keep my hand, if I hold onto your hand, you must know that I am unsuccessful. And then you can take all my books and burn it. There's no sincerity in it. And if I release your hand, then you must know it's been accepted by Allah, and then you can start sharing it with my students and the people can benefit from it. Ajib. Allah grant us real good qualities. Look at a great scholar, alim, great Shafi alim, wrote many beneficial works. Still at the end of his life, he's worried, did I have sincerity? Did I not have sincerity? Did I write these books for Allah's sake? Did I not write it for Allah's sake? Allah grant us ikhlas. May Allah grant us good qualities. May Allah eradicate from us bad qualities. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. There's a lot of brothers missing today. Those who are present, you should encourage those who are missing to come in, to join us again. Today is the 17th of Ramadan, the day of Badr. Today we're supposed to be increasing in khair and good, not decreasing. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept. Bismillah. When is Shaykh Muhammad Isaac's reading? No, not the Qasida. You can read the Qasida also.
الزم باب ربك واترك كل دون واسأله السلام من دار الفتون لا يضيق صدرك فالحديث يهون الله المقدر والعالم شؤون لا يكثر همك ما قدر يكون فكرك واختيارك دعه ما وراك والتدبير أيضا واشهد من براك مولاك المهيمن إنه يراك فوض له أمورك واحسن في الظنون لا يكثر همك دير يكون لو ولم وكيف قول ذي الحماق يعترض على الله الذي خلق وقضى وقدر كل شيء بحق يا قلبي تنبه واترك المجون لا يكثر همك ما قدر يكون.
I also need a marker for this book, man. Give me a green one.
من كتاب مزن سكينة والسكون شرح قصيدة لا يكثر همك ما قدر يكون الإمام الحداد شرح العلامة الحبيب عمر بن محمد بن سالم بن حفيظ ابن الشيخ أبي بكر بن سالم بعلوي الحسيني نفع الله به وبعلومه وبعلومكم في الدارين آمين إلى أن قال واشهد من براك اشهد من خلقك وأنشأك وأوجدك من العدم وخلق كل هذه الكائنات من حولك وكن مستحضرا عظمته وأن تدبيره أحسن من تدبيرك ولا تغفل عنه ولا تحتجب عنه ولا تستر نفسك عنه أما هو فلا يستطيع شيء أن يستره ولا أن يحجبه وهل مع هؤلاء المكلفين من حجاب إلا أنفسهم فأنواع الحجاب هم فإذا أنهى العبد كل وهم استقلال وجود له واستقلال فعل له خرج عن نفسه وتلاشت الحجب كلها قال القائل حجابك منك وما تشعر وداؤك فيك وما تبصر وتحسب أنك جرم صغير وفيك انطوى العالم الأكبر وشد من براك
العالم الأكبر نعم.
عالم وفيك انطوى العالم عالم الأكبر واشهد من براك اشهد من خلقك فصورك فعدلك في أي صورة ما شاء ركبك قال تعالى هو الذي يصوركم في الأرحام كيف يشاء لا إله إلا هو العزيز الحكيم مولاك المهيمن المتولي لأمورك فإن قبلت دعوته وأجبت نداءه ونفذت أمره كان متوليك برأفته ورحمته وعطفه وإحسانه وإثابته وحسن جزائه وواسع عطائه وعظيم آلائه بما لا عين رأت ولا أذن سمعت وإن أعرضت وأبرت وأدبرت وأدبرت وتوليت وعاندت كان مولاك القاهر لك الذي يرسل إليك سخطه ونقمته وعذابه وطرده وبعده ولا طاقة لك بذلك. مولاك المهيمن على كل شيء، فكل شيء تحت هيمنته بلا استثناء، وكل شيء صنعه وخلقه وملكه وتحت قدرته يتصرف فيه كما يشاء سبحانه وتعالى. مولاك المهيمن على الأجسام والأرواح والخواطر والنظرات والمقاصد والحركات والسكنات والنعيم والعذاب والجنة والنار والملائكة والإنس والجن والجمادات والحيوانات والنباتات والبراري والبحار والهواء. والهيمنة بهذا المعنى ليست لغيره أصلا، ومهما تهيمن مخلوق على مخلوق فبحدود. أما الهيمنة المطلقة فله وحده عز وجل. إنه يراك. قال تعالى: أم يحسبون أنا لا نسمع سرهم ونجواهم بلى.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين. لا إله إلا الله. الإمام الحداد رحمه الله تبارك وتعالى said: فكرك واختيارك دعهما وراك والتدبير أيضا. Your planning also cast it aside, meaning take a means, adopt the asbab, but know ultimately that Allah is the one that is in charge. And learn to submit yourself to His decree. And know that what He decreed is better for you, whether you understand it or not. And therefore the Salihin, they used to say that we do not desire for ourselves any situation save the one that I find myself in, because this situation Allah chose for me. Now, complete taslim to Allah's decree, to Allah's plan. And they made examples of the hijrah of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ajib. And so he said that put your trust in Allah and not in your plan, but put your trust in the plan of Allah. So confirming that, he said, Washhad man barak. Observe and only witness the one who created you. The one who created you, the one who brought you into existence, the one who brought you into existence when you were non-existent, the one who created all of existence around you. Washhad, witness Him, mean being present with Him. Observe His greatness. Acknowledge and know that His plan is greater than your plan. Do not be heedless of Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do not be veiled from Him. Do not veil yourself of Him. As for Him subhanahu wa ta'ala, nothing can veil Him and nothing can cover Him. No. Most people in this world have veiled themselves from Allah. They themselves are a veil between themselves and Allah. When a slave removes all delusions that he exists on his own, because he does not exist on his own, and the delusion that he does whatever he wishes, that an action emanates from him, that he made salah, that he gave zakah, that he fasted. If he removes these delusions from himself and he comes to the reality that it's only Allah that is the true existence, and it's only Allah, His existence is 100% dependent on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's decree and will and power, and that whatever action that he may have done, in reality it is only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who has done that action. What happens to this person now, when this becomes a reality within him, then the veil between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is removed. Now he begins witnessing and seeing Allah. So the poet, he said, your veil between you and Allah is from you, but you do not perceive. And your illness is within you, but you do not see. You think that you are but a small creation, and you don't realize that within you, you can hold the great knower, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Your heart can hold Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Washhad man barak, witness the one that created you, that formed you. Fa'addalak, He gave you this perfect, balanced body that you have. Yesterday we spoke about the fact that your right and left has to be in sync. There has to be a balance. He is the one that created that balance within you. He gave you your sight, He gave you your hearing, You're hearing, ما شاء ركبك والذي يصوركم في الأرحام. It is Allah that has formed you in your homes as how He willed. لا إله إلا هو العزيز الحكيم. مولاك المهيمن. Imam Haddad went on to say, مولاك المهيمن, your master al-Muhaymin. How's al-Muhaymin in the translation? Who's reading the translation? Read the translation. Rashid. How do you translate al-Muhaymin? Al-Muhaymin means the one that is in charge of your affairs. I think the sovereign they may use. Mawlaka al-Muhaymin, your master al-Muhaymin is the one that is in charge of all of your affairs. If you respond to his call and you execute his command, if you obey him and execute his commandments and abstain from his prohibitions, then he takes charge of your affairs with compassion. He takes charge of your affairs with mercy. He takes charge of your affairs with kindness. He takes charge of your affairs by rewarding you greatly. He takes charge of your affairs by granting you. He takes charge of your affairs by showering his favors upon you. The protector. He takes charge of your affairs by giving you that which no eye has ever seen and no ear has ever heard of. That's when you accept his call and respond to his commands and execute his commandments and abstain from. But if you turn away from him and you turn your back to him and you don't execute his commandments and you disobey his prohibitions, then your same Muhaymin, that's the protector, becomes a qahir over you. So what does Allah do now? He sends to you his anger and his displeasure, and he sends to you his punishment, and he expels you and he pushes you away from him, and you cannot handle that. Mawlaka al-Muhaymin, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-Muhaymin, the one that takes charge of your affairs. Allahu Akbar. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us under his care, and may we be from those that respond to his call. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. In a few days our i'tikaf will start, and then we'll spend more time on the poem Ilzam Bab Rabbak, inshaAllah tabaraka wa ta'ala. Allah grant us tawfiq. What is today? Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Friday will be the i'tikaf starts Friday evening. We hope all our brothers registered already. And if you can't sleep over at the masjid, then i'tikaf in our madhab doesn't mean that you must sleep over at the masjid. The essence of i'tikaf in the Shafi'i school is to spend as much time as you possibly can in the masjid, engaging in various forms of worship. Now, engaging classes of knowledge, engaging in reciting Quran, in praying salah, in making taraweeh, in making tahajjud. That's the essence of tahajjud, of i'tikaf. To dedicate your time to spend as much time as you possibly can in the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you are able to sleep over, then it's better. But the fact that I'm not able to sleep over at the masjid doesn't mean the doors of i'tikaf are closed for me. No. If I can't sleep over, I can still come Fajr, I can come Dhuhr, I can come Asr, I can come Maghrib, I can come Isha. I can attend the dhikrs, I can attend the classes. There's a lot of i'tikaf. In the Shafi'i madhab, in fact, Imam Nawawi and others said that whenever you enter the masjid, you should have an intention of i'tikaf. So when you enter the masjid right now, if you sat in this dars and you made the intention of i'tikaf, you would have received the reward of a class of knowledge and i'tikaf. And if you did not make the intention of i'tikaf, it means you just got one reward and you deprived yourself of the reward of i'tikaf because you never made a niyyah. And therefore it must become your habit whenever you enter the masjid to make the intention, oh Allah, I make the intention of i'tikaf for as long as I will be in the masjid. Nawaitu sunnat al-i'tikafi ma dumtu fil masjid. You make that niyyah now, then the rest of the time that you're in the masjid, you'll get the reward of i'tikaf. So this is for our brothers and even sisters that are online and those who are present. Even if I'm not able to sleep over, sleeping over is better, because then even my sleep becomes ibadah. But if I'm not able to sleep over, for the very least, i'tikaf is still open for me by spending as much time as I can in the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that also applies to our sisters. Many times our sisters complain, there is no masjid for us to sleep in. We can't sleep at the masjid. Doesn't mean you can't make i'tikaf. Come for tarawih, make the niyyah of i'tikaf. Come for tahajjud, make a niyyah of i'tikaf. Come for class of knowledge, make a niyyah of i'tikaf. Yani al-bab maftuh. But we should still try to register. Ya Allah. يا ربنا اعترفنا
بأننا اقترفنا وأننا أسرفنا على لظى أشرفنا فتب علينا توبة تغسل كل حوبة واستر لنا العورات وآمن الروعات واغفر لوالدينا ربي ومولدينا والأهل والإخوان وسائر الخلان وكل ذي محبة أو جيرات أو صحبة والمسلمين أجمع آمين ربي اسمع فضلا وجودا منا لا باكتساب منا بالمصطفى الرسول نحظى بكل سول بالمصطفى الرسول نحظى بكل سول بالمصطفى الرسول نحظى بكل سول صلى وسلم ربي عليه عد الحب وآله وصحبه عداد طش الصحب والحمد للإله في البدء والتناهي سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين في كل لحظة أبدا عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وصحبه. الفاتحة.